Today, we're going to be talking about 8 ways to thrive as the world burns down around you. I'm Nathan Fraser.
And I'm Brett Veinotte.
And this is Mindset and Mastery. Okay, welcome to the introductory episode of Mindset and Mastery. We're going to not be so doom and gloom as maybe the title may have hinted at. I feel like when I heard that title, I thought of that dog that's sipping the cup of tea as the house is burning around him. And he's like, this is fine.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Well, at first, I just want to say that you and I have been working together for like a decade and doing some really fun stuff over the last year. Me with my project, School Sucks podcast, we did a collaboration called Emotional Manipulators for Hire, which eventually became this current project, Mindset and Mastery. And we actually, like, through the last couple of years of craziness, as we watched the world, I wouldn't say start to burn, but burn at a higher temperature, we created an interesting time capsule with this series of shows that we did where, you know, we took my experience as an educator and your experience as a marketer, two people who have like written and installed programs in the minds of people. And, you know, through those shows that we did, talked to people about how they could actually unwrite those programs or write better programs. And we both realized like this could be an ongoing project. And that's what Mindset and Mastery is. So we've already recorded a lot together. And I'm excited that we're going to start releasing these shows finally here in 2022 as the world almost fully burns. Here we are, you know, to offer some optimism because it's the only option, I think.
It does feel like the world is burning. Also, though, at the same time, my business is doing better than it ever has before. And most of my clients, our businesses are doing really well, even though there's a lot of economic woes out there, gas prices going through the ceiling and food shortage rumors and all of this stuff going on. I gotta be honest, I'm still doing very well, and most of my clients are still doing very well. And that's why I kind of wanted to start off this series just by maybe doing a shift of how to look at things, because I'm steady building and the people that I'm working with are steady building. And through all of this turmoil, I'm doing better than I ever have. And I fully anticipate that that's the path I'm going to stay on. And so I wanted to do, I reached out to you and I said, hey, let's do for the introductory episode, let's do maybe a little bit of a mindset shift or a perspective shift so that people have an understanding that even in these crazy times, there are ways that you can thrive, and there are ways that you as an individual, as a business owner, can continue to thrive even if the current economic situation doesn't improve the way that we all kind of wish that it would.
Absolutely. Yeah. I want to just second that. I am surrounded in the network that I've built by a lot of empowerment and a lot of optimism. And I pulled from that network to help create this list of 8. We're both going to contribute to it. These 8 tips that we're going to provide, not the final word. There is way more beyond this, and we're going to be building that out in a lot of the content that we provide. So let's see. Do we want to get started with number 1?
Yeah, let's go ahead and just jump into it.
Absolutely. All right. So, one of the most influential books that I ever read in my life was actually written in 1973, and it was called How I Found Freedom in an Unfree World by Harry Browne. And man, that was 50 years ago, and the world was a lot freer then. Harry was already calling it an unfree world. And when we thought about putting this list together, that's actually where I went first. Because I think a good starting point, as far as mindset is concerned, is to know what might be in your way and to be able to take an inventory of obstacles or pitfalls. And in this Unfree World book, Harry Browne calls them traps. And he argues that like one big theme in why you aren't free or as free as you'd like to be is the traps that you put yourself in. And these traps are mostly mental and emotional, but getting out of them is really necessary for claiming your freedom or expanding freedom in more theaters of your life. Now, a recurring theme in these traps, I think, is that meaning and happiness come from something external. And that is the pattern that people need to break. So his list was fairly long, and I just streamlined it down to 6 that I thought were most suitable for our purposes. But I think the important thing here to take away from this, these are just examples. Be willing to do an honest inventory with yourself about what kind of mental obstacles might be in your way and how you're reacting to outside circumstances in crisis that might be affecting your ability to thrive. So, one of the ones he lists is called an identity trap. He puts them into categories. The assumptions that others will do things the way you would. My goodness. You can't control others' natures, but you can control how you deal with them. We're going to talk more about that one in just a minute. A morality trap, the belief that you must conform to a moral code created by somebody else. That has become very big in the last 5 years, and it seems to be like growing exponentially as well. This demand that you conform to somebody else's morality. The next one he calls a government trap, the fear that the government is so powerful that it can prevent you from being free. So the government's changed a lot since 1973 when Harry Browne formulated this. But I would say holding on to that idea, at least in aspiration, is still really, really important. The next one he calls a despair trap, the belief that people can prevent you from being free. A utopia trap, the belief that you must create better conditions in society before you can be free. Good luck with that. And last one, the burning issue trap, which, obviously the way we took information in 50 years ago when Browne wrote this book was uh, entirely different. I don't think anybody could have foreseen the information maelstrom that we live in today. But this is still true that it is a trap to believe that there are, some compelling social or political issues that require your immediate participation and attention and emotional investment. That is coming at you in such a firestorm today that you could never possibly keep up. You could never fully understand any of these issues. And you're going to wind up feeling very small and very unfree and very powerless if you continue to pursue them as if they all have great importance. So those are examples of some of the traps that Harry Browne lays out in the How I Found Freedom in an Unfree World book. But, people can make their own lists. They can self-reflect and they can, discover how they might be setting their own mental and emotional traps. That's number one.
I kind of want to dive into that a little bit and just clarify that even myself, and I'm sure you as well, Brett, I don't want to speak for you, but just knowing you and gone down this path with you, we both have the potential to slip into some of these traps ourselves. So it's not like we're standing above people and looking down and being like, you idiots, you fell for the morality trap or the government trap. I fall for these as well. And 2021, there was a lot of times where I started feeling helpless. I started feeling like the people around me were preventing me from being free. And so I just kind of want to clarify, while there is truth that all of these are traps, it doesn't mean that, and while we're condemning them, it doesn't mean that we don't also empathize or have the potential to fall victim to them ourselves, at least speaking for myself.
Yeah, in this show, I'm never going to say that I'm better than you, the listener or the viewer, but I am selfish. I will admit to that. And everything that I offer as advice, these are things that I need to keep telling myself regularly, right? These are all reminders to me. I think you probably feel the same way that, especially in today's conditions and in the information environment that we live, we need to keep reminding ourselves of these things. We need to stay focused. We need to avoid, drifting into these temptations, whatever they are, these automatic, negative thinking patterns, whatever they are. It can happen, but I think being conscious and being vigilant is really, really helpful for staying on track. So everything that I include here is stuff that I need to remind myself of on a regular basis.
Yeah, absolutely. And that last one that you mentioned, burning issue trap, I think that segues into the one that I brought up. Number 2 is spheres of influence and spheres of control. With so much information out there, with 3 Tim Pool episodes a day and uh, nighttime CNN or nighttime Fox News. There's all these different, the trans swimmer issue, or the what are they teaching our kids in school about race, and all of these different things that we don't really have very much influence over. We don't really have very much control over. And yet we can go out chasing our tails over these things. And a lot of times it's things that don't really matter that much. I feel like sometimes, hey, we need to pay attention to this because it will have a societal impact, and it will have an impact on the ideas that your children are being taught in schools and the world that your children are going to grow up in. I believe that there is some legitimacy to that concern, but I also look at the majority of the issues. I feel sometimes like the media is a laser pointer and we're all just a bunch of cats, and they just say, oh, now you're going to pay attention to this, and tomorrow we're going to have you paying attention to this. And when we chase the laser pointer around, it's giving all of our energy to what they want us to pay attention to, what they want us to be focused on, instead of the things that we need to be focused on. And we're constantly giving our attention to the world that they want to build rather than the world that we want to build. So for me, knowing what things you can influence, what things you can control, and staying focused on the things that lead to the world you want to build for yourself, and focusing on the things that you can control, has a very empowering and uplifting result in your life, and it helps you get to the world that you want, if only for yourself and your family and the small community of people around you. Whereas constantly worrying about the latest hot button issue, constantly arguing with people about things that really don't affect you that much, or really don't matter, or next week there's going to be a new flavor of the week, and that last thing that you were arguing with someone on social media about isn't even going to be a secondary thought in their mind anymore. When we're constantly giving our attention to those distractions, to those things that we have no power over, it makes us feel disempowered, and it's energy that we could be putting into building our own goals, our own world. And this is something that you've talked about. This is something I think I first learned from you way back in the day on School Sucks, was focusing on your spheres of control, your spheres of influence, and not really putting all of your energy into the spheres of things that are outside of your control and outside of your influence.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I gave that advice again to myself first and then to an audience probably 12 years ago. And yeah, again, the situation was entirely different then. My observation was there were a lot of people waking up to a lot of the realities of the world and feeling angry and wanting to direct so much of their attention to things beyond anything they could actually impact. And my advice was like, start in the center, start with yourself, become the best you can, the master of yourself, and then expand your influence out from that center, versus going to some place and exerting all this effort and attention and emotion where you have almost no control, like politics, for example, and just drowning there and winding up feeling very small and very disempowered. An updated version of this for the current age of media is like, whether we're talking about the corporate press or social media, things are thrown at us at such a rapid fashion that we get this massive horizontal view of, and this is something we'll talk more about in the future here. We get this massive horizontal view of everything that's going on, but we don't have time to dig into anything vertically. It's like trying to reach a certain level under the earth by digging a bunch of tiny holes next to each other instead of digging one deep hole, which is impossible and would never work. But that's what people's information consumption behavior is actually like today. They just dig tiny holes and think they're actually getting somewhere. And after they do a few shovelfuls, they move on to dig another little tiny hole. That's how information comes at us today. So that's also a very disempowering feeling, where we see how much there is to know and how little of it we truly understand. That can hit us on a subconscious level, but it hits us. And that's why people need to tribalize, because they need to run to the security of a group who's made the same shallow meaning, so they feel, reaffirmed in what they have decided to believe, really just for the sake of time and convenience. So yeah, I think the spheres of control consideration is more important now than ever, and it's probably going to get even more important as the future, the near future at least, wears on.
Mm-hmm. And actually leads perfectly into the third one that you have here about planting your flag. You talked about finding the security in the tribe, and I kind of see the tribe sometimes as a bunch of lemmings running towards the edge of a cliff. So I wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah. So when the whole health crisis started back in March of 2020, so 2 years ago, uh, the advice that I was giving on School Sucks was don't do what everybody else is doing in the in the time of a crisis. And I tried to, like, as I was trying to help like some of the older people in my life make meaning out of this situation, they'd say things like, "Well, I saw this on TV. I heard this on TV." I said, if that's where you're getting information, you're exactly in the same pack as everybody else. And you need to figure out how to get ahead of that pack, or for safety's sake, get out of that pack, get a safe distance away from that pack, but don't be running at pace with that pack. That's part of this, but also is asserting yourself as an individual. You know, planting a flag was a phrase that I learned from you as far as like being successful in building your own brand, mostly through social media. So this is understanding that you are the most valuable asset that you possess in finding others, your identity, your individuality. And the best way to find like-minded and supportive people is to advertise who you really are. So don't be false. Don't change yourself based on your environment. That has also become a real trick in the last year, as there is more like a culture of suspicion around certain medical procedures and what do you believe and do you hold the right beliefs. But I think consistent thought and consistent action is a very, very important part of freedom. And if you find yourself like conforming to the expectations or the demands of others or of some mob, that is certainly a way of giving up your freedom. And
Mhm.
all of that also comes from how I found freedom in an unfree world. That idea, like staying consistent and being true to yourself, is a really, really important tie-in with your plant your flag idea.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to second that book, How I Found Freedom in an Unfree World. It was one of those books that I first came across when I was exploring the ideas of anarchism and libertarianism. And it was one of those books that really helped solidify my desire and thirst for freedom, and also helped me realize that you mentioned it earlier, you're not going to find freedom and fulfillment searching outside of yourself. You have to find it on the inside. And this point that you just made just kind of backs up that it's comes from you. It's, as everything in the world starts with you. Point number 4 is being opportunity minded. And this is the one thing that I've noticed over the last couple of years. I work with a guy, Pradeep Sangha, and he does the Male Entrepreneur podcast. And he has just been killing it over the last couple of years. While everybody else was running around, freaking out, losing their businesses, he has been thriving and he has been growing, and his assets, his collection of property that he owns, everything has just been expanding. And he's in Canada, where in Canada they have way stricter lockdowns and mandates and everything than we have in the United States. And I just a guilty admission, during 2020-ish, early part of 2020 leading into 2021, I kind of lost a lot of my steam. I had 2 of my clients, their businesses got shut down because of the mandates. They went out of business. That meant no more advertising. That meant no more copywriting. That meant half of my streams of income. I had 4 or 5 clients at the time, and 2 of them went down, and my business got cut in half. And I kind of freaked out, and maybe not freaked out, but a lot of the wind got taken out of my sails from 2019 moving into 2020. A substantial amount of wind was taken out of my sails. While working with Pradeep, I just saw his business keep getting better and better. And I'm just like, what's different? What's going on? Why is Pradeep, who's in worse circumstances, more restrictive circumstances than me, why is his business picking up and growing while mine is shrinking? And one of the discussions that me and him had was, He was opportunity minded. He was looking for the opportunities. Even as the world was falling apart around him, he was looking for opportunities. And he was, this kind of goes against what you just said about staying firm to who you are, but he was adaptable. And he said, okay, the situation is changing, and maybe I don't have to change who I am and what my values are, but I do need to adapt to the changing situation. And I need to realize that the old opportunities might not exist anymore, but there are new opportunities that exist. And one of the things that we were talking about is businesses, while certain businesses were falling apart and closing down left and right, one of the businesses that pretty much across the globe was doing well, was picking up business, was lock picking. And it might be because of certain problems. One of the things that we were talking about was the majority of the increase in business was like people forfeiting on their storage units, people forfeiting on their properties and leaving it locked. And then the owner of the storage unit has to call a lockpick person to come and pick the locks to empty out the storage units. Another thing was, you got to pay for you lock your keys in your car. Do you break the window and pay for the window, or do you call a lockpick person? Different situations, but lockpicking was one of those businesses that saw a major uptick and always does during down economies. And there's other businesses that repair people. We have a very replaceable society. The washer and dryer aren't working anymore. Let's just go ahead and throw them away and buy a new washer and dryer. The TV's not working the way we wish it would. Let's just throw it away and buy a new TV. But during economic downturns, repair for TV, repair for auto, repair for basic things in your house like the dishwasher, the washing machine, repair goes up. And so in any kind of down situation, there's always an opportunity. While everybody is selling their assets off, you can be buying those assets if you have money saved back. So being able to, in any situation, stop and say, okay, the world is on fire. Can we roast some marshmallows and make some s'mores? There's always opportunities. And if you're opportunity minded, while everybody else is in scarcity mindset and freaking out and scared of everything that's going on, if you're able to keep yourself in the opportunity mindset, looking for those opportunities while the whole world is going the other way, you can make out like a bandit. And I don't want to say that that's taking advantage of other people's hardships. I just want to emphasize that just like the repair situation, sometimes people need to buy new TVs and sometimes people need to have their TVs repaired. And most of the time, people probably need to just stop watching TV altogether. But we work with the world that we have, not the world that we wish we had.
Yeah, so I think it's be true to yourself in identity and be adaptable in action, right? Like the actions you need to take to continue, self-optimizing or moving towards your purpose. That's a way that we can negotiate between those two, the seemingly contrasting positions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think to really be able to do that, what you described with your client Pradeep is to recognize, and this brings us to number 5, that you can actually be more free in a way, precisely because of decline and collapse in many cases. And this comes from embracing your freedom. In other words, like stop trying to, compete with what your parents did or what your friends are doing or colleagues, or most importantly, like the old world. I think we need to stop living in our parents' world where they were told, like, if you are a certain way, then you get to have all these wonderful things that mean, you're successful. That was a much simpler world with much fewer measurements of success than I think we have in this world. So if you are less dependent on systems, like you're talking about Pradeep, an entrepreneur, less dependent on systems, institutions, material things, you have the potential to be much happier and much freer, obviously, than people who are dependent on those things. So I think it's really, really important that we leave the standards of success from like our parents coming up in the 1980s where the entire economy is booming. And that set a standard that I think a lot of young people today still live with. And they need to be more flexible. They need to be more inventive. They need to be more adaptable. A lot of those tracks that existed for the older generation are not there anymore. We know plenty of people who are, in their 50s, 60s, 70s, who worked one job their entire career, retired, and got a pension, right? Those tracks are available to, a very, very small number of people today. So embracing your freedom and becoming less dependent on systems, institutions, I think is really, really important.
Yeah, and this is kind of like a reoccurring theme of this episode, but I'm just thinking about, we have friends that invested in Bitcoin very early on and ended up just completely thriving on it because they saw the potential when the rest of us were worrying about the 2008 collapse of the economy. They were like, hey, there's this new technology that we can get into. Right now, NFTs, I'm not completely sold on NFTs, but I'm watching some of my friends really rake in the dough with it. And that's always going to be the case. If we're stuck to what made our parents free, if we're stuck to what made previous generations free, when the world changes, that's really not freedom in being able to adapt and move in a new direction. When you hit a roadblock with the old direction, that really is freedom.
And I think that relates to number 6 on our list as well.
Yeah, and number 6 is kind of like my entire philosophy about business and relationships in general, which is focus on providing value. And this is very hard, especially when we're in scarcity mindset and we're watching the price of gas go up and we're watching the price of houses go up and we're watching food shortages and we're like, oh my God, I need to take care of me. I need to get what I need to get. I need to get what I need for my family. And we get in this mindset where we're stuck thinking about what we need to take from the world, what we need to get from the world. And the counterintuitive truth of this is the people who provide value are always the ones that get the most in return. If you're just thinking about what you need to get because you're worried about the price of gas, the price of housing, the price of food, if you're only worried about what you can get, it's going to be a bigger struggle to get the things that you need to get. But in any economy, but especially in a down economy, the people who provide the most value are going to be the ones most in demand. And when we no longer have the luxury of trivial items, when entertainment is not as valuable, when we're worrying about the real basic things, like the things lower on the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, when we're worried about those smaller things and we're not able to obsess about the more trivial things, the people that demand, or the people that provide value, are going to be the most in demand. They're going to be the ones that we give all of our attention, all of our money to, all of our value to, because we're not in a position where we can, I guess right now, and for the last 20, 30, 40 years, we've had it really easy, and we can spend our time and our money on frivolous things that don't really matter that much, that don't actually provide that much value. We can take our money and we can spend it on things that don't really provide very much value in our lives because we're not in very hard times. But when we are in hard times, we have to reconsider, do I really want to spend this money on whatever stupid, trendy hobby it is that I was blowing my money on before, or do I need to spend this money on the things that are really valuable? And if you're somebody who your focus is providing the things that are really valuable, you're going to be where the money flows. You're going to be where people's attention flows. You're going to be the person that people are coming to and saying, hey, what can I give you so that you can give me what it is that I value? So providing value is always my first and foremost focus on any kind of business interaction, on any kind of relationships that I'm in, but especially when the world is burning around you, providing value it makes you, it amplifies, it makes you 10 times more valuable than you were in easy times.
Yeah, and what you said there at the end is pointing out that this is, not a self-sacrificial act for sure. Like value is a two-way street. I think that's something that's really important. But first, you have to provide it. And that's a good transition to the seventh item on our list, which is nourishing your relationships and building new ones. So, we're certainly in an age where a lot of our social systems are collapsing, and building one of your own is a very, very important thing. So, for a long time, social networking has been kind of a replacement for actual meaningful human interaction, just collecting friends and followers and eyes and likes online. Obviously, this is a time to do it in the more traditional sense. Like I spend a lot of time trying to get to know my neighbors. I've started a gardening project with a neighbor, and we're getting to know each other through that. I have this interest in this other town where there's a kind of safe house if need be. So I'm actually trying to set things up there and get to know some of the people in that area as well. Just a place outside. I live in a city, so a place outside of the city. Knowing the people whose faces I keep seeing instead of just knowing a face, knowing a name, I think is really, really important. But that doesn't mean this doesn't extend to our, online world as well. And finding people who are having fun with the so-called end of the world and staying away from doom and gloom people, which also means staying away from doom and gloom media the best we can. That's something we'll talk a lot about in the future. But I think this, like having a good supportive network is, a source of strength, a source of confidence, a source of happiness, and reinforcement, for the things that you want to do, your purpose, what's important to you. And not putting yourself in a position as things get bad around you where you feel isolated or anxious. Like help provide in the provision of value to others, you'll get that value in return. And you'll start to see a lot of new opportunities likely come your way if you're committed to doing that.
Mm-hmm. And that last point that you talked about, as far as media consumption goes, we do have an episode coming up about conscious content consumption. And if you're interested in how the media that you consume is influencing the world that you're living in, it's a whole episode into and of itself.
Right. Absolutely. So we did it at the end here. We've got one left. I'll let you take it.
Okay, so these are the 3 C's, and I don't know when I first came across them, but As a Man Thinketh was when I really understood the importance of these when I first read that book. And the 3 C's are calm, cool, and collected. And the reason that these are so important is, number one, being able to stay calm, being able to stay cool, being able to keep your wits about you, stay collected while things are falling apart around you. Number one, they help you make clear decisions. When we're in a state of panic, when we're in a state of emotional overwhelm, we tend to make really bad self-sabotaging decisions. So in order to avoid that, being able to keep calm, cool, and collected in stressful times is one of the most valuable skills that you can have for yourself. The other reason is people don't remember what you say. People remember how you make them feel. And if you're somebody who emanates calmness, a sense of cool and collected being, that makes you very attractive to other people, especially when other people are losing their minds, when the world is burning around them. If you can offer, just by your mere presence, a sense of calm, a sense of shelter in the middle of a storm, people will flock to you. People will be drawn to you. And when stuff is going down, and I guess this is more so if you're trying to be an effective leader, but I think that a lot of the people listening to this podcast, a lot of people that are interested in mindset and mastery, they are interested in being effective leaders, whether it's for their family, whether it's for their business, whether it's for their team, whether it's for their neighborhood, wherever the case may be. Being able to stay calm, cool, and collected, especially when the world is falling apart around you, makes you a more effective, more attractive leader. It makes you more attractive because people want that shelter, and it makes you more effective because you've got a clear mind when you need it the most. So remembering calm, cool, collected, especially in times of strife and struggle, it's so important to embody those values.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, just think about this outside of relationships too. I think these three C's boil down to a single S, which is steadiness. People go back to restaurants, they go back to products, they go back to, uh, news sources because they know what they're going to get. Right?
Mhm.
They know that there is not going to be volatility and upset when they arrive at this familiar place. So I think being that familiar place, having that steadiness is really, really important. It is going to be tested in the future. So, taking that seriously and practicing that is also very important.
Man, okay. I feel I feel awesome about this episode. I was kind of shaky going into it. It's our first episode, and we kind of took on a big task for this first episode, but I think we nailed it. Brett, if people want to go check out more of our stuff or find some free bonus material that we have for them, where's the best place to go?
Everything is available at mindsetandmastery.com. And if you go to the homepage, you'll see a little preview that we did of a larger training. So please watch that, drop your email, and we'll send you the whole thing.
Awesome. Brett, thank you so much, man. I appreciate you taking the time, compiling this list with me and presenting it to the listeners, the viewers out there. Mindsetandmastery.com is the website to get more. And until next time, we will catch you later.
Catch you later.